Welcome back, everyone. If this is your first time, I definitely encourage you to go back and watch the first part of this interview with our favorite TikToker, Kilean. The last episode, we kind of went into her upbringing and her wild experiences with BYU Idaho and the temple. In this video, we're going to kind of bring it home into the now and what's going on with her in her life, how Mormonism has affected her in this day and age. So anyhow, another note from the editor, the audio is still not great because it's still the same videos, but hopefully this part sounds good to you all still. But let's get back to the interview.
So, I'm thinking, the celestial room brought me back to, like, my experience, and I totally remember that, and I was like, oh my god, this is so awkward.
It really is.
It's so weird. So at this point, I'm curious, do you have, like, the figurative shelf yet? Like, is it there? Have you put anything on it? Or are you still, like, you're in it?
I am still in it. I would say things didn't start, like, going up on my shelf until I was married and in family wards as a married woman and attending the temple more than just that first time. That's when I really started noticing things that really started to poke at me. Specifically in the temple, I never liked veiling my face, and my husband at the time, I mean, we had the same problems. I would voice these to him, and he too would be like, yeah, that's really weird. Like, I don't like that either. Like, promising to hearken unto your husband, things like that, and being ordained a queen and a priestess unto your husband. Yeah. Those things really did not sit right with me. I did not like how that made me feel. And he didn't like it either. Like, neither one of us really liked that. But it wasn't until I was in wards as an adult where I was in charge of teaching children that things really started to irritate me and make me feel weird. I was with the young women a lot when I was first married. And things about modesty really bothered me. I would get in trouble from the other adults, like the young women's president. I remember her pulling me aside and just like, hey, you can't dress like that. You need to dress more modestly. These girls look up to you. And I'm wearing garments, so I'm fully covered, but I would wear leggings. I would wear leggings so that I could wear shorter dresses, partially because I liked shorter dresses. Also, just because that's what I had. I just got married. Unless you're going to volunteer to go out and buy me a full new wardrobe that's going to cover my garments, I'm going to be wearing the $12 leggings from Target underneath everything.
Right. No kidding.
If you'd like to donate to my clothing fund, be my guest. But she did not like the way I dressed. She didn't like the influence she thought that I had in dressing that way in front of the younger girls. And she told me a couple of times that was not appropriate to wear. Obviously, I still wore it, and I think that's probably why I got removed from the calling, but we don't know.
Oh my gosh. Well,
things like that. Yeah, things like that bothered me, and she would send girls home and talk to their parents if their shorts were too short, showing up to mutual, and that always irritated me. I never understood why you could not just be happy that these girls were showing up.
But
they were here. They're here. Leave them alone.
Yeah.
And I started to get really irritated in the way that men would speak to me at church. If it were me and my husband talking to a man at church, I was not a part of that conversation. He even noticed it. I mean, he was even aware of how much that man was talking to him. I could have melted into a puddle on the ground. He would not have cared. Like, anytime there was a situation like that, he was talking to my husband. I was not even, hi.
I'm here.
So it was really weird. Like, I know that sounds silly, but just like really microaggressive things that you don't matter if you're a woman. You don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So things like that started to really bug me. And as time went on, they had me a lot with the young women. In the next ward we were in, I was also with the young women. And there were several situations where one of the young men's leaders sent one of the girls home from a pool party for wearing a swimsuit that he decided was not modest enough. And I don't even remember what it was, but it was modest enough. And I remember going with the not Relief Society, Young Women's president over to her house because I was livid. I was so pissed off. We went over there to try to talk to her and just be like, hey, come back. It's okay. Her mom came out and was like, no, she doesn't want it. I'm like, okay, that's fair. And I remember just begging the president, the Young Women's president, like, you need to talk to him. I still regret not being loud enough and saying more, but I felt like such a young person at that time that I'm in my early 20s and I'm supposed to stand up to this man in his 50s.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to do that.
And go
I do now, but I don't. Yeah, and they don't really take me seriously because I look like one of the girls. Like, I'm often counted as a Laurel when they're counting leaders. Like, nobody's going to listen to me.
Right.
Yeah.
My ideas on what women should wear just look like I'm immature. From their perspective, I'm immature and I'm not faithful enough. That's why I'm not supportive of them sending somebody home for an immodest swimsuit.
Right.
When the reality of it is 50-year-old man, if you're uncomfortable with how a 14-year-old girl looks in a swimsuit, you need to go home.
Yeah, you're the problem.
You need to go home.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's not put the blame on the girl because it's
Yeah.
not her problem to worry about how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So those things happened a lot. Those were the first few things that like really started to push my buttons.
And so were you...
Was the beginning.
Was it like... Because people will ask us, they're like, did you know, like, when did your faith crisis or faith transition or whatever you want to call it, when did it begin? And I'm like, I don't really know. Like, honestly, it's hard to, like, pick a point. It's
little things that happen over time. That was the beginning. Oh, and also being in Young Women's, the girls would ask a lot of questions. And somebody would always ask about polygamy. It always came up. And I would have to try to research and like figure out how to answer this question because they want an answer to it. And I could never find an answer. So I was always left with this like, God, this really bothers me because I can't answer this question. I don't understand it. And that was another really big thing. That was the beginning of the end for me, trying to understand polygamy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
that's hard
and
too,
so-
because they're coming to you and they want to understand. And
They
you're
want
like,
answers.
I can't answer that. Like, I don't know.
And any answer
Yeah.
that you really have to offer them is like really
Church apologist
gross
nonsense.
Yeah, like you wouldn't
Yeah.
want to tell that to some young kids because it would totally just destroy them.
Yeah. Okay, so that
Yeah.
was kind of like the beginning of the end, basically.
That was the beginning of the end. And then shortly after that, I got pregnant. I think we'd been married for about 4 years when I finally gave in. I was not ready to have a baby. I thought something was wrong with me because I felt a lot of pressure from every direction to have a child.
Yeah.
And I put it off and I put it off and I put it off. And I even remember getting into arguments of like, it feels like you're making excuses. And looking back, it's like, I was because I didn't want to do it.
I absolutely was. Yeah.
Yeah, like very valid excuses. I was not ready, should have been. I don't need another one.
Right.
But at the time, with the culture of the church and having everybody around you, family and friends and parents and everyone you look up to, wondering why are you not doing this? Like, there's no point in putting it off.
Right.
What's the point of putting it off? You need to get it out of the way.
Yep.
So we decided to have a child. And it was at the time my husband was in school. So we moved back home to live with my parents while he was in school. He was not allowed to work while he was in school. His school would not allow. It's a very, very all-consuming program. So we moved in with my parents, And I was pregnant, and that's where I had my son living there. We lived there for 1 year, and then we moved back out on our own. But during that year was when everything piled up for me.
Okay.
And it started with polygamy. Somebody on Facebook from BYU, Idaho, actually, had posted something about all of Joseph Smith's wives, and I just didn't, like, I couldn't believe it. Like, that's not
Whatever.
true.
Yeah.
My God, like,
Yeah.
stop.
Oh, yeah.
And they posted several things, and eventually I read one, and I just was like, oh my God, this is not true. Like, I would know. This is so embarrassing that they think that this is real.
Yes.
What
They should do
year?
their research.
Yeah.
And at the time I was doing a lot of like family history stuff, so I had access to a lot of the family history stuff. So you can actually go look up Joseph Smith's
Right.
and see that he does in fact have several wives.
Right.
And this is at the same time that the essays came out.
Okay, that's what I was going to
So
ask.
between Facebook, the essays confirming it, and then shortly after I found Lindsay Hansen Park's Year of Polygamy,
Okay.
and that is where I started. I loved how she tackled it. She did an episode for every single wife.
Right.
And this had been an issue for me for a long time. And so the way she went about it was very much like, hey, these women were erased from history.
Yes.
They were super important people. They were very faithful. They did what they thought they needed to do. And instead of being honored, they are erased.
Yep.
And that really bothered me. That bothered me so much. So I went to her podcast and I listened to every single episode on Joseph Smith. I went past that too because there's so many. But I did each one. I wanted to honor every single woman that I had never even heard of in my entire life. And we're talking years of Sunday school, 4 years of seminary, 2 years at a church university, several years of institute. How have I never heard of this?
Yep.
How? So that combined with the essays coming out on polygamy very quietly behind the scenes, that about did it for me. Like I already had other problems. I had problems with garments. I stopped wearing them when I was pregnant and I never put them back on.
Hey, same.
Yeah.
They're so
I just never put 'em back
especially
on.
while pregnant. It's the worst.
That was the biggest thing. Like, I like the idea of having a symbolic representation of your belief. Like, that can be a beautiful thing.
Sure.
But this is so poorly done. Like, these garments are the most ill-fitting pieces of cloth. Like, they could not be worse for a woman's body.
No, they
and
could not.
a lot of people that are Mormon don't realize they go under everything. So you wear your bra on top of a shirt, and then you put an additional shirt on top of that.
Oh yeah. It's just so. What was that like a?
No.
Was it like a conscious choice for you because you were like, oh, I'm pregnant, they're uncomfortable, I'm just not going to wear them, or was it more of a, I'm on my way
That's
out?
how it started.
Okay.
It started, these honestly just don't fit me, and I hate being uncomfortable. I hate having things in my armpits. Like, I can't do it. I hate it. So I stopped wearing them. But that also happened to be once I had my son. At the same time, everything was kind of falling apart. And it really bothered me that I noticed when people weren't wearing them. I would like look at women, and not men. I don't remember ever caring if men wore their garments. This is like a women's issue in my mind. Like, I don't remember ever thinking about it in regards to men. This is something women, I think, police each other on more than anything else.
Totally.
But like, you look and you notice, I can tell she's not wearing them. And then I would wonder why. And
Yeah.
I could feel myself doing that, and it really bothered me. Like, I hated it. And so I did not want to participate in that anymore. I didn't want to put them back on. I didn't want to be a part of that culture that was like, oh my God, I can tell she's not wearing them, and I can't believe that. Like,
Right.
she's not faithful enough, because
Yeah.
there's really no excuse for you to not wear them. If you're a faithful member, you're going to wear your garments. There's no good reason to not wear them other than you aren't faithful enough.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
So that bothered me, and I did not want to participate in that anymore.
Okay.
So I never put them back on.
Okay. So was this like, was there anything about pregnancy specifically that like triggered this for you, or would that just happen to be the time that it was happening around?
That just happened to be the time that it was happening.
Okay.
I had a really easy pregnancy. My body does pregnancy very well. I didn't have any bad symptoms. My childbirth was pretty good. Like, no, that was an easy period of life for me.
Okay.
So yeah, it just happened to be at the same time as this. And my husband was in school at the time. In fact, I remember being scared to tell him. And I remember messaging a friend, like she had just left and she was the only person I knew my age that had like publicly talked about leaving. And I remember messaging her on Facebook and just being so scared to tell him. And I remember having to wait. He was so wrapped up in school and studying. He was not in any place. I mean, once you start digging into it, it's like a full-time, all-consuming thing. And he was on his last year of school, and I think he was even in his clinical year. So he was not even in town most of the time. He would come back on the weekends and go. He was doing rounds at different places. So we were not in a place where I could go to him and be like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Will you please read this? Like, he couldn't. There was no way. I had to wait until he had time. But he was really cool about it. He knew I wasn't wearing my garments, and he never cared. He just let me do my thing, which I really appreciate. But I do remember being terrified to tell him because I didn't know how he was going to take it.
Right.
And it wasn't till we moved out of my parents' house, things calmed down, and he was able to look at some things. And I think I asked him right before I did this, like, what was the first thing? And he said his first things were the essays on polygamy and the essay on the seer stone. For him, that was like, what? Like, this is on the website, but no one knows about it, and they just snuck it on the website. Mm-hmm. And he tried to talk to his brother about it, who was an elders quorum president at the time and had never heard of it. So like, what the hell? How does nobody know about this? They're just like hiding on the back end of the website. Like, This is insane. And he served a mission, so he knew everything about church history. He taught it.
Right.
How did I not know this?
Yep.
What do you mean there was a rock in a hat that they have? Like, what?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So that was his deal breaker. And so once we moved out of my parents' house, we moved into a ward where we didn't really know anybody. And that made the transition out really, really a lot easier because nobody really cared if we were there or not. And in that ward, we still went. Like, you know how it goes. Well, maybe not. You guys, it seems like your transition was like, boom. Mine was like 2 years long.
Right.
I had to wait.
Yeah. I get that. It's like, well, you don't want to, you're still trying to figure it out. So you don't want to like put the pressure on yourself to be like, stop going to church. Because you're like, no, I can still go to church and not alarm other people while I still figure it out.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what you do. And it's so hard to talk about it. To explain it, you need like 3 hours. You need a really good grasp on understanding church history before you can deconstruct it. It's very time consuming. You can't just do it in 2 minutes in a sentence. Mm-hmm. So it's really overwhelming to try to explain. But we slowly stopped going. And in fact, I remember the moment I was done. I was sitting in primary. They had put us in primary with the sunbeams. My son was little. He wasn't even in primary yet. But I remember just being there, sitting in the front row with the little sunbeam kids, and they're doing a lesson on the prophets. And I could not even sing the words. Like, physically, I could not do it. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I cannot teach this to my kid. I can't do it. It's not like I don't want to. I cannot. The words will not exit my mouth. I cannot teach this to my son. I can't do it. It's not true. These men are disgusting. Mm-hmm. Why are we singing songs about them? They're awful humans. Yeah. And we kind of just stopped going after that. although it took him a really long time to be able to tell his family. So when we would go to Sunday dinners, I would like put makeup on and do my hair so it looked like I went to church that day, because that was easier than explaining why we did not go to church. So we did that for a long time.
People are like, how do I tell my like
80-year...
we'll get questions like, how do I tell my grandma who's like on her deathbed and like 90 years old that we left the church? And it's like, sometimes it's just not worth it.
Better not.
Yeah, sometimes it's just not worth it.
Just let it go, yeah.
Okay, so so what about, and I know you don't want to go too in depth on this, but what was your family's reaction?
Oh, I don't mind talking about my family. My dad and mom have separated. I can't remember if they were separated at the time. I don't think they were. I think they were still together. But my dad was no longer a believing Mormon. He went for a long time. He just would go sit next to my mom. They're divorced now. But at the time, I believe he just was going to sit next to her. And I have 3 other siblings. Only one of them is active. So my other siblings did not care. My dad obviously was very happy. I had a lot of support. It made it a lot easier. My mom was pretty bummed. I remember telling her that conversation was hard. Her reaction was kind of like, well, yeah, I can see why you don't want to go. It's easier to not be Mormon. And my response, of course, was like, how do you know? You've only ever been Mormon. I've done both, so I can actually tell you which one's easier.
Yes, exactly.
It's really hard to leave. And then she ended up sending me like a 32-page printed testimony, which honestly was just like a bunch of prophet quotes from different conferences. I don't know if she thought like I hadn't read those or seen them or heard them my entire life, but there's not a prophet quote in the world that's going to undo all of the bullshit that Joseph Smith just took me through.
Exactly.
Like, what do you... So...
You're like, all of the sources that caused this came from the church. Right?
Mm-hmm. Nice try.
So, good.
But she... I just don't talk about it with my mom. You just can't go there. There's just topics I can't. We just don't talk. But she's kind to me, and so we kind of just keep a very, distance.
You have boundaries around things that you don't want to touch
just
on.
like a big cushion. But when we spend time together, we get along. We can spend time and have a good time together. And she's really sweet, really kind. And I think that's about as good as I can ask for from her.
For sure.
So
mentally and emotionally, you're going through all this, you get to the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. What is what are you feeling emotionally? Like, what is weighing on you? What are you feeling?
Oh, sorry. We have a visitor.
Oh, we love visitors. You're so cute.
I'm not cutting this out, by the way.
She's special. She's very needy.
Dude, that's okay.
There were so many moving parts at this time that it's really hard for me to separate going back on exactly where I was mentally during that time. And also because it took like 2 years. It was a really long, slow process. So I don't know that I remember exactly. I do remember the moment in primary where I was done. The weirdest thing, though, for me was not being able to talk about it. Having family members tell me, while my side of the family was supportive and open to hearing about it, which a lot of people don't have that, and I feel like very privileged to have that. Sure. I think it made everything a lot easier. But my in-laws, some of them I'm very close with, wanted nothing to do with it. Openly stated, I don't want to know. That does something to you when you have this huge thing happen and they refuse to hear it. Mm-hmm. It changes what kind of relationship you can have with that person going forward. It immediately puts this big wall up of like, okay, I can't cross that. I just can't go there with you. You don't want to hear it. And while I understand it because I've lived it, I've been on the other side and had family members leave. I remember when my sister stopped going and I remember my reaction to that. But still, having that person that you love and care about and are friends with tell you you're going through a hard thing and I don't want to hear it is really painful.
Well, it can
so
almost
that
be
I think,
invalidating, like to my like.
It's very invalidating.
Your
Yeah.
experience.
Or like you're going through this thing and I don't want to be affected by it, and so I'm not going to hear about it.
Yeah. That's a very painful experience.
Very apathetic.
Yeah, so that was really hard. And then just like losing the community is hard, especially with a kid. There's so much nostalgia just tied up in it that when it disappears, whether you liked it or not, it just feels weird to have this massive hole in your life where some of the stuff you don't even think about till it happens. It's like Halloween shows up and I only have one kid. Just me and him most of the time. I can't take him to a trunk or treat. That's like my whole childhood is growing up at a trunk or treat.
Yep.
What do you do on these big days, these big events that used to feel really fun? Your whole community is just like, you all got real quiet on us real quick over here.
Yeah. No, really.
Like that was the hardest part for me, is just losing my community. That's still hard to this day.
So you ultimately decide, I mean, and that was how it was for me too. I knew I couldn't teach my son this stuff. I knew I just couldn't do it. And so did you and your ex ultimately agree, like around the same time, or were things happening at different times? How did that interaction go when you sort of made that decision in your mind that you weren't going to do this anymore?
Yeah, we were very much on the same page. I just got to it a little bit faster than him. Honestly, probably just because he was wrapped up in other things with school and stuff. But once he was out of that schooling and he was working and he wasn't like stressing out about trying to pass school, we were on the same page pretty much right away. The only thing that took a long time was him. It was really hard for him and took a long time for him to tell his family. Right. He did not want to watch his mom cry. So that took a long time. Coming out with it took a long time. So you're there, but it might take a year till you feel like you can openly be not Mormon.
Right.
And I remember that being kind of frustrating, but also I was close with his mom too, so I didn't I understood that, and I don't remember feeling angry about that or anything. We were on the same page. Once he knew it was bullshit, he was done. Mm-hmm. I think he had a bit more anger than I did, which I think is impossible when you spend 2+ years of your life preaching it. It hits you different when you've baptized people. It hits you different when you've wasted 2 years of your life. And you are now 2 years and 9 months for him with the surgery. So almost 3 years of your life, you are behind schedule because you devoted so much time to sharing this. It just impacts you differently, I think, when that happens. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, you did. That was great.
We were on the same page. It was really nice. I cannot imagine all you people out there that do mixed faith. I don't know. That would be so hard. All the love to you for figuring that out, if whoever's out there has figured that out.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have been able to handle that.
I have tremendous respect
that
for
would have been
people in
so hard.
marriages, because we were essentially the same. We've been on the same page, and so I look at people who are navigating it with, one spouse really in, one spouse really out, or a variation, and it's that is so difficult.
Yeah. Or the reason for their split being because one person chose their faith over their spouse.
Yeah. Which sometimes that might be necessary for a person, but I just can't even imagine going down.
Oh, I couldn't. I don't know how. I don't know what I would have done.
Okay, so what happens next for you? Are you in a liberated phase? Are you in a, oh my gosh, I have all this freedom phase? What's next for you?
Trying out all the coffees and
Are you exploring experimentation?
Not really. I mean, I guess a little bit. it was really easy for me to drop the modesty culture. I never liked the modesty culture. I like to be comfortable physically in my clothing, and I don't like to wear a lot of clothing. So it was really hard for me to be modest.
Right.
For no other reason than I want to feel comfortable. It's 110 degrees.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that was the easiest thing to stop doing, is to stop dressing modestly. And that, I mean, that took me about 4 seconds. But I got super into, of course, after I found the Mormon Stories podcast and the CES letter. I forgot to mention that. That was a big part of it as well. The Lindsay Hansen part, like her year of polygamy was my beginning. But shortly after that, I got super into Mormon Stories, and I got really wrapped up in a fun way. I had a good time doing it.
Right.
For the first time, I was very interested in church history. Like, it became interesting because there was finally interesting things happening.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It was terrible, but it was interesting.
Yes.
So I got super into the Mormon Stories, and I would listen to so many episodes. The Sandra Tanner is my favorite one. To this day, it's still my favorite Mormon Stories episode. That helped me deconstruct everything. She's an angel.
Jeez.
I loved her
She is totally a
episode.
woman.
Seriously.
Yeah, she's incredible. But no, I kind of just went about life. Like, I don't think I went through any. This is also about the same time, shortly after my marriage started kind of crumbling into pieces. That took up a lot of my space emotionally. So I was kind of dealing with that. Although we went through the faith transition together, and I was really grateful for that. And a lot of people, I'm sure, looking at us from the outside, and both of us are bothered by this, kind of think like, oh, you guys left the church and then you got divorced. Like, of course you did.
Yeah.
Even though that had nothing to do with it. The issues were there before and they were there after, and probably even caused by a lot of what we learned in church. And so our faith transition did not cause us to get divorced. But that is about the time when things really started to crumble. And so that took up a lot of my brain space.
So you had
that and unlearning history. Yeah.
So you had some other priorities going on. It wasn't like this.
I did. And I had a little kid that was
Yeah.
taking up all of my space.
Right.
So between those two, like, he doesn't have any siblings and he never stops moving. So just between those things, you know,
We understand.
Oh, yeah. Too much.
never stops moving.
Okay.
So that took up all my space. I didn't have any crazy things happen. Of course, I started drinking coffee, and it took me a couple years, and then I started drinking alcohol, but none of them really, just for fun, like nothing crazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then.
I was going to share my wedding story.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The ceiling.
But it's not really that great. I just had to put it on here.
Right.
It was way awkward for us too.
Yeah.
God, they had us kiss twice. It
What?
was so awkward.
Wait, like he gave you a kiss and then they were like, nah, that's not good enough kind of situation?
That is exactly what happened. Oh, you guys can do better than that. Come
Oh
on.
my
And then
gosh.
he had us kiss again. It was, I'm not kidding, the most uncomfortable I have probably ever been in my life.
Yeah, I've witnessed
With all your
that
family
before.
sitting there and everything, like, oh,
All
yeah.
of your family, yeah, and you're kneeling at this altar dressed in your 19 layers of pleats.
Yep.
Looking up at this man who just learned my name 2 minutes ago, even though I've known him for months.
Oh, that's
So he tells you to kiss, and as you know, the altar's like just wide enough so that you can't quite like get across without like, okay, I'm coming,
Yeah.
right? So we kiss. It's awkward because we're kneeling across an altar, so it's just like a,
Right. It's just like
Oh,
a
come
small
on.
thing, right?
yes, like this is so weird. So he's like above us. Oh, come on, you guys can do better than that. Do another one. So we have to like do it again.
Oh my god.
I was mortified.
Oh, I would have been mortified. Like,
See,
mortified.
and I don't know if I've ever
that was my-
told you this. That happened to a family member who got sealed like a couple months before our wedding. And like in the back of my mind, I was like, that's not gonna be me. So like very cringe-worthy effort was put into me not having the sealer say that to us.
Oh.
So I made sure
This is
to
news to
kiss
me.
Jordan with much vigor.
I wish they did, like, if they did a dress rehearsal for Mormon temple ceremonies, like, that would have been amazing. I would have been a lot
Seriously.
more comfortable. I would have hated it still, but I would have at least known what to expect, and then I would have maybe enjoyed my wedding ceremony.
Instead
But
of
I did
panicking
not.
about
There was-
everything that's happening. That's how I
Yeah,
was.
and there's no vows, there's no anything personal. Like,
Yeah.
it is not
Yeah.
special.
Okay, we've done all this. We've gone through
Yeah.
your history and dealt
Yeah,
deep. Where are you now?
we've
can-
gone through all of it. I think leaving the church with somebody definitely created like a bit of a trauma bond. And that was both probably what I needed in the moment, but ultimately kind of just put off the inevitable. So we did separate, and we've been separated for a while now, but we still get along really well. I know you've seen the TikToks. Everybody asks.
Yes.
How do you guys parent? We just do. I don't know. I wanted my kid to not dread every holiday. You know, I didn't want him to not want to go to Christmas because it's going to be so awkward that both of his parents are there, and have to not want one to, like, schedule times where, like, you know, that's how some families do it. Like, the dad will come in the morning and then the mom will come 3 hours later on Christmas. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to do that to my kid. Like, it's super important to me that he doesn't feel like he has to walk on eggshells around his family. Like, it's already been hard for him. I don't want to make it any harder. So it was super important to me that I stay friends with this person so that we can keep some sort of weird family dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it's weird. Like, I do, but it works for me.
But that's really admirable,
So-
though, because coming from my parents divorced when I was really little, and that is traditionally like the weird dynamic that happens where it's like, you know, one parent on one day, one parent on another day, holidays alternate. And so the fact that you
It's
went into
exhausting.
that thinking like, I don't want this to be the dynamic, I think is really admirable.
And I don't think we, as a society, need to change our thinking away from this idea that this kind of situation is weird, because it's not weird that you both are putting your child before
Yourself.
any sort of qualms that you might have between
Yeah.
each other. So it's really admirable that people are thinking of their child
Yeah.
rather than, well, he said this thing that was really shitty and I don't ever want to see his face again, so I'm
Right.
going to drop my child off at the sidewalk and watch him scurry up to the door, and then as soon as he's in the door, I don't want to see any more of him, so I'm out of there kind of situation. So
Well, it's not all that uncommon anymore. Like, divorce is extremely common in today's day and age. And so I think normalizing, like, what you guys are doing is amazing.
Yeah, I hope that it becomes more of a thing. It would be really nice. Just, I mean, I have parents that have separated too, and just like logistically, it is so complicated.
Yes.
Not so much anymore because my mom doesn't live locally, but when she did, it was hard.
Yeah.
Like, just, it's so hard. Can everyone just get along, please?
seriously.
Can't we all just get along?
Yeah.
Yes.
For the
Just
kids.
for
do
like
it
a
for the
day.
kids.
And to be fair, I didn't come out of a relationship where I felt like I was in fear of my safety ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do have that to
Sure.
say. I know people come out of relationships where there's like physical abuse or something
yeah.
like that that would make this type of relationship probably impossible.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to like erase that like everybody can do this, because
Yeah,
some
yeah.
people really cannot.
sure.
That's
For
true.
sure.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that is obviously the exception. If you can safely do that. That should be.
Yeah, if both people can do it, great.
Yeah.
If not, do what's best for you.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all we care about, right? What's best for you.
True.
Okay, so you and your husband separate. What is this new phase like for you?
Really good and really hard at the same time. I very much miss the simplicity of my little Mormon life.
Yeah.
And I think coming out of that, we all do a little bit. Like, it's hard figuring everything out from the beginning, halfway through, or not halfway through my life, hopefully. I have more than that left. But it's hard to start over when you had your eternity mapped out.
Yes.
So this stage of my life is really hard, but very, very rewarding and also really fun. Mm-hmm. So it's just a very emotional time of my life.
Sure.
And I'm just trying to navigate it. I'm dating a woman now, as you all know.
Hell yeah.
And that's been super fun. I don't know what to say about that other than that's what I'm doing. I can answer any questions, but I don't know where to take that topic, really.
Okay, well, when we talked about it the other day, I thought you mentioned what your girlfriend had said to you, and I thought she made a really good point, because talk about what you said to me the other day.
Okay. It's I've expressed this to her, that, like, it's a hard space for me to take up room in, because I don't feel like it has been a big challenge for me. I don't feel like I had a really hard struggle with, like, coming out or anything like that. And so a big part of me felt very guilty taking up space to have, like, this unearned pride for this movement that, like, I didn't really work for. I didn't struggle. I didn't have what I felt like was enough hard times to say that, like, I could take up room here. And she kind of put it in a different perspective for me, which was, people need to see that. People want to see that. And it's really important, especially for young kids, young LGBTQ kids, or even not young. People need to see that. It gives them hope that maybe someday that will be normal.
Right.
It's not always a struggle. Mm-hmm. It's not always hard. It's not always this huge, heavy thing that impacts every part of your life. It can be easy.
I love that.
So that kind of changed.
Yeah. Because it's so normalized that it's tough and it's a struggle and it's painful. And that's why I thought I agree with her. I think it's so important that you share this piece, because this is, like, the perfect example of, like, this is just normal. Like, we don't have to talk about this like it's this, oh my God, it's this crazy thing. Like, it's just who
Clutching
you are.
Pearls
and it's just normal.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. When I started kind of dating her, I was also watching Schitt's Creek at the same time. So that was a bit of my inspiration, because that show is so great. And the David part where he's buying wine and he's just casually like, oh no, I like the wine, not the label.
Right,
that part was like, oh yeah, that's me. I don't care. I met a person. I think they're wonderful. She happens to be a woman, and I just don't care.
I love that.
That's amazing, honestly. And
yeah,
where did you...
and that whole show is so wonderful. If you watch the season, like, I don't know what it's called, but after season 6, they do like a
little wrap-up
behind the scenes type thing. Yeah, like a little roundup, and they talk about how that was kind of what they wanted to do in the show, was create this relationship where the whole premise of the show was not about how hard, like, the focus wasn't about how hard this relationship was because they were gay. They just kind of pretended like they lived in a world where it wasn't an issue. And that was so inspiring to me. And that was kind of how I wanted to come out, I guess, which was, I don't think this should be a big deal, so I'm not going to make it a big deal.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so I kind of just treated it like I would have treated it if I were dating a guy. And that's how I told my friends, with the exception of my dad. I did surprise my dad because I knew he would be okay with it. And that was super fun. He was over at my house playing in the backyard with my son. And I just told him, like, hey, someone's going to stop by, somebody I just started dating, so that you can meet them. And that's all I told him. I gave him no other information. And he was like, oh, okay, sounds good. And when she came over, I went to the front yard, got her, and brought her into the backyard and just introduced her. Hey, Dad, this is Lexi. Lexi, this is my dad. And he kind of froze and just was, okay. And then just kept playing the game.
That's
and
awesome.
I love that. Like, he processed for a second, and then it was just
he took
like,
him a
alright,
second, like, this is not what I was expecting, but it's cool.
That's awesome.
So,
I love that.
That's amazing.
yeah. So,
And
yeah,
then-
it's been really, really great. Most of my family's been super supportive, and it's honestly just, it's been super fun. And I think part of that too is that all of my friends and family have been put through so many filters at this point. I've already lost my marriage. I've already lost my community. I've lost my faith. I've lost a lot. I have nothing else to lose.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have anything to lose at this point. Like,
Right. Well, you're
all my friends.
you're just living authentically. Like, that's just
Yeah,
what it is.
the people that are in my life right now have gone through all of these filters, including a lot of like very public things with my divorce that have been really hard. And the people that made it through all that with me, they're probably going to stick with me through this next thing.
Sure.
So I didn't have a lot to lose in coming out. I'm putting it in quotes because I don't think it should be a thing I have to come out with, but
Right.
to some people it is, and I love that. I think you should just be able to do with it what you want, and I
Exactly.
hope that is where we're moving towards
Yeah.
in the
What's-
future, where
what's
it doesn't have to
comfortable.
be
Yeah.
a big deal.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you say that you like lost all of this stuff, everything went through a filter. Did that play into your TikTok content? You're like,
Why not?
why not? I've already
Yes.
lost all the people that I'm going to lose, so just throw it all
I
out
mean,
there.
I thought I had. It's put up. It was one more additional filter that a couple people didn't quite make it through. But yeah, that's a big play into it. And a lot of it too comes from the number of years I spent being just silent on issues that really impact a lot of people in a really negative, hurtful way.
Mm-hmm.
And how I've felt looking back on those times that I chose to be quiet because I wanted to not offend anybody.
Right.
I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep peace. And when you stand up for things, you can't choose between having peaceful dynamics in your life all the time and, you know, moving forward with social justice. You kind of have to pick one. And yeah, that's definitely been a big play in the people that are in my life will hopefully stick around because they have through all of this other stuff. And if they don't, which some of them have chose not to, I will be okay. I've lost everything. I will be fine.
Which is like,
Amazing.
it is amazing, but it's also, I mean, it's so hard. Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing, but I sit here and I listen to you and it's also heartbreaking at the same time because so much of this is
Yeah.
toxic Mormonism, unavoidable, but also because it's like you get stuck in this weird place, right, of like our parents taught it to us because it was what they were taught, right? And so you can't really fault them because they were taught it too, you know? And so it's just like this weird place to sit in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can compare how it felt looking back. Like, I lost friendships over campaigning for Prop 8.
Oh dear.
I will take what's happening right now over that 100 times.
For sure.
Like, nope, never again am I going to choose my religion over human beings.
Right.
Never again am I going to choose doctrine over a living, breathing human person.
Exactly.
Ever. So I don't believe that the Mormon church is true, but that's irrelevant. I don't care if it is or not. I will go to hell with my child rather than go to heaven alone because I wanted to stand up for something that, like, does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, I don't care if it's true. I am going to be there for my kid no matter what that looks like. I'm not going to choose. I wouldn't want to go to a fake heaven without my friends and family.
Absolutely.
Who would choose that?
Yeah.
What kind of person would rather do that? I would give up my religion time and time again if it meant that my kid got to be himself and have a happy life and love who he wants to love. So yeah, I'm going to stick up for every gay kid out there, every trans kid out there. And if that means I'm going to hell, great.
Here we
Yeah.
go.
If they're not counted, count
I
me
don't really
out.
care
No.
who gets their feelings hurt along the way.
Yeah.
That is not a factor in whether I stand up for these things or not.
No, and that's
Yeah.
really powerful.
Yeah, honestly, and it's something that a lot of people need to realize that you can say these things and you can step on people's toes, but it is not your job to be policing when people get offended because of what they have been taught.
Yep.
If they're going to put what they've been taught in front of what they believe, then you can't really do anything about that.
Well, that's why I think your TikTok is such a great example of that because you just put it all out there and you don't give a shit. Like, you're processing and you went through this in your way and you don't care what anybody else has to say about it. You don't care how they feel about it.
Yeah, you can't.
Or you go insane.
Yeah.
And it's like no matter what I pick, people are going to be upset. As a practicing faithful Mormon, I lost friendships because I believed in super homophobic doctrine, and that hurts people.
Right.
So no matter what you choose to do, you're going to offend people unless you just stay silent, which also hurts people.
Oh yeah,
So
as I say, not a lot of good comes from that.
Not a lot of good. Now we're going to get into some questions that some of our Instagram followers have asked. We've kind of screened these
Okay.
beforehand to make sure they're relevant. So we're just going to get into them real quick.
Okay, so this one was a good one that I think your perspective on it would be good. How do you let go of all of the anger you feel I can't get over the 18 years I gave the church?
Time. I left a long time ago. Honestly, I don't know. Therapy. Time
Always
plus
therapy.
therapy. And making fun of myself has helped a lot.
I love that
Honestly.
perspective. You gotta laugh about
Yeah.
it. I mean,
I do. I have to laugh about it. Bringing humor into it has helped a lot. But I feel like just honestly, over time, I've been able to let go a lot of the anger. It doesn't look that way on my TikTok. People think I'm actively angry. No, I'm actually not anymore, which is why I've freed up enough space in my brain to create content.
to be able to do this. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good one to kind of transition out of here. How did you end up? Do you question all faith, and does God still exist at the end of the day for you? And if that's too personal, you don't have to answer it.
No, I kind of don't care. I don't know. I'm pretty apathetic about it. There's no way for me to know, so it doesn't feel like a good use of my time to try to figure it out. When, if there is a God, I imagine that God would just want me to live my life to be happy and to try to do good to others and raise my kid best I can. And I don't really care. I've gone to other churches. None of them felt like a place I should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably sit more in the atheist category, but mostly I just don't care.
Okay, no, I love that.
That's a totally valid answer.
Feel like I can kind of connect spiritually with the earth when I go
Yeah.
outside. And that's enough for me. I just don't care.
I love that. Okay. Another good question. When does the guilt of leaving stop? At least in your experience.
I think that's tricky. That's going to be hard for everybody. I don't know that I feel guilty about leaving. I don't feel guilty about leaving. at all. Once I read the history and learned about the prophets and how horrific the beginnings of this religion were, I didn't have a lot of guilt in leaving. I wanted nothing to do with it. I'm very happy to not participate. So,
no,
I don't know.
That's totally valid.
Yeah.
Well, that just goes to show this, like, the spectrum of emotions that people will go through in leaving Mormonism.
Yeah.
Like, no journey
Yeah.
is the same.
Yeah. I do carry a lot of guilt. It just isn't directed towards leaving the church, the Mormon church. Yeah.
How do you handle family who are still in the church?
We do not talk about it.
I think that's the best way to do it, honestly.
And being a
There is
Mormon
no other way.
introduces this weird dynamic of you talk about religion, where in like traditional senses, that's a topic that you avoid in most cases.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with setting
No.
those boundaries and being like, we're just not going to talk about this. Like, we can still have a relationship and talk about something else.
Yeah, you have to choose between having a relationship and having that conversation with them. It's a bummer because, like, I'm willing to have the conversation and still be friends with you if you would choose to still participate. They are not willing to give that back. You just kind of have to deal with it.
Right.
It sucks. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. Nobody has a good answer.
No.
We just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
There's really no wrong way of
a
dealing with
case-by-case
that as long
basis.
as you're protecting, like, yourself and your mental health in the process. Let's see. Do you feel a gap in your life? I'm 18 years post deconstruction and miss being with others.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how you wouldn't feel a gap. It's a huge hole. It never goes away. You can't replace it.
Right. Have you
Yeah.
felt like you found community in a different way since leaving?
Something about bonding people together in a high demand religion is really hard to replicate because people don't have the guilt of showing up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to replicate that community outside because I definitely have some wonderful, wonderful friends and some incredible family members who are always there for me no matter what. But they are spread out all over the place. So the local immediate community, when it comes to like events and holidays, I don't think I can replace that. And that's just going to be like a hard part probably forever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Last one here. Do you have intrusive religious thoughts that you reject but that keep recurring? And if so, how do you deal with that?
No, not religious thoughts necessarily, although I would say purity culture did a number on me, and yay.
Does a number on so many of us.
So,
unfortunate.
I mean, therapy has helped a little bit, but you can't always undo
Yeah.
the origins of what like molds your brain as a kid.
Yeah.
So
What I would definitely say is therapy for this one too, because intrusive thoughts, we're potentially talking about maybe some OCD type behavior, and that's unfortunately really common in people who leave the church because they religious scrupulosity and these type of things. Like therapy, go to therapy.
yeah,
Go to therapy.
Find somebody
Do it.
find somebody who specializes in faith transitions. There's a lot here in Utah.
There probably is a lot in Utah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll do a little plug for the Mormon Mental Health Association that I'm a part of. These are people like mental health professionals who are licensed all over. Many of them are licensed in other places other than Utah, but they're familiar with Mormon doctrine, Mormon tradition, Mormon cultural type things, so that there's like a level of understanding and familiarity there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking
The
for
less
one,
you have to explain, the better.
Yeah. If they already understand, then more of your paid time goes to actually helping you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
One of my last questions for you, because I think this will get asked if I had left this up for more time. What is your advice for someone who is navigating a faith transition, a faith crisis? What is your advice?
Oh my God. The outside circumstances of your life like play into this so much. It depends. Like, do you have supportive friends? Do you have supportive family? I'm never going to tell anybody to like go do what I did. I had support. I had a husband who was okay with me doing whatever I needed to do. I had a dad who had already transitioned out. I had a wonderful aunt and uncle who had left the church years before. I had siblings who had already left. I had people. I was going to be okay. Not everybody has that. And if you're alone, take your time. Just go slow. There's no rush, and you don't owe anybody an explanation. I've heard of people who, like, members of their ward will show up, or missionaries will show up and ask them. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to say anything you don't want to say. You don't have to answer your door. You don't have to explain anything. You can do whatever you need to do. It's your choice in how you want to navigate it.
Sure.
But I would just say, take your time and find a friend. And if you don't have anybody local, find somebody on the Exmormon TikTok. There's so many of us.
There are so
But
many.
there is somebody going through it at the same time. There's somebody where you are. There's somebody before you, after you, like on every level of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So just find someone you can talk to and take your time.
Yeah, if you're navigating
Perfect.
this, you're, as evidenced by the large Exmo community, you're definitely not alone.
And on TikTok, we're relatively small, but on places like Reddit, there's like...
Reddit.
Oh,
Facebook.
yeah, I don't really go on Reddit, but Reddit's a big,
Yeah, I don't really like the Ex-Mormon Reddit that much. TikTok is a lot more fun of a place, but...
Yeah,
it's just more
everywhere.
fun.
Yeah, we will plug TikTok, and we're definitely going to plug Kilean on TikTok because her videos are iconic. If you're part of the community, then you know who Kilean is. So, at Kilean H on TikTok is her handle.
Is there any other things you want us to plug or share? Or...
Oh my God. I don't think so. I think we covered at least most of it.
Okay.
I think that's about it.
Awesome. Well,
Yay.
thank you so much for joining us. It's
Thank
been
you
like
guys. Yeah.
steeped with anticipation
Yes, we
thus
were
far.
so excited. I was so excited to hear your story. It's amazing, and you're amazing, and we're so grateful for you.
Yeah, so
Oh, thank you guys. You guys are the best.
keep doing what you're doing as long as it doesn't feel like a chore. If
Yeah.
you stop, we don't blame you because, like, honestly, it gets
It's a lot of work. Content
It's
and
a little
TikTok and
much.
everything.
It's a lot of work.
It's so much work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody go follow her. Go put some money in her tip jar. She has her Venmo or your...
Want to.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
love.
thank you.
like we've felt it thus far. So thank you so much. And
Yeah.
we,
See you next time.
yeah, we'll maybe have you on some other time. We'll talk more about your BYUI stories.
Oh,
many
yeah.
of those.
Oh my God. I'll have to like channel that.
So we are very grateful to Kilean for coming on and doing this interview with us. It was awesome to just hang out with her, and we like to consider her a friend now that we've just made over the internet. But we encourage everybody to go and check out her TikTok page at Kilean H on TikTok. We'll put that link in the description. You can also find us on TikTok and Instagram under at Jordan and McKay. Definitely check us out. We hope that you enjoyed this interview, and we're planning on doing some more in the future. So if you would like to see us get in touch with a certain ex-Mormon or anybody that's along the Mormon spectrum, definitely do so, and we will try to get to everybody that we can. But hit that subscribe button and hit that like button to help us out, and we will see you in the future.